is doing well. It is definitely hot here in Durham, North Carolina, because it's talking about temperatures of about 103, 104, 105, and all along those lines. The end of the weekend as we get ready to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States, this being 2026, and all along those lines. So a lot of celebrations will be going on. Usually around this time, I would be getting ready to do the Festival of the Eno. But as you know, last year there was a major storm, Chantel, because that event is held at a state park, the Eno Park there this year in Durham, North Carolina. And I've been an MC there for a number of years, decades, and all along those lines. But they had that severe damage. So this year it'll be held in September. Because I have definitely been there when it has been sizzling hot. I've also been there when it's been rain. I've been there when it's been unseasonably cool for summer. I don't think it's ever been like super cool, but it might have been in like the 80s or something like that. But definitely it is usually the 4th of July weekend hot, and people are getting ready for their fireworks. I know that there'll be a food truck rodeo here in Durham on the 4th of July, and I think there will be the fireworks going on at the county state, well, at the Durham Bulls Stadium and a number of other locations, including some of those in our state capital of Raleigh and all along those lines. So, and a lot of people are going to be seeing the fireworks that are going on with the World Cup. I was actually watching a game earlier today where one of the African teams was winning, and then they wound up losing to England. So they were actually Danny Kane actually had two shots that he won, and all along those lines. So it looks like he managed to pull off that victory, and folks were very much impressed by that and all in that space. I know earlier we had our investment show, and at that time it was 1-0 because it was the Democratic Republic of Congo that they were playing, and they were down 1-0. And then in the second half, they came back and won in regulation. So I know that there's a whole race for the golden ball, and it looks like after those two goals that Kane scored, that he passed the great Pelé and everything like that. And I remember being a fan of Pelé, the great Brazilian star, and all in that line. But definitely a lot going on in that world, and it's a lot happening in that situation. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say. Maybe some of my guests have been watching the World Cup. Maybe some of them are getting ready to watch the U.S. against their opponent, which is, I believe, Bosnia, and all along those lines. As a matter of fact, I know it's Bosnia, and that is something that folks will be excited about as well. So I know that there's some folks that are into the real estate space. So well, my guest is definitely in that space and is doing some renovations. And I'm always thinking that houses need to be renovated. I probably could do some home care in my own apartment, even though I don't have a house. Home care is something that is very important and all along those lines. But here to bring in my guests, see what they've got going on in their world and what's happening in their life. And maybe they're following the World Cup. Maybe they're not following the World Cup, but as y'all know, I love to bring in different guests and learn from them and see what they've got happening in their world. And we just kind of like sit back and learn from each other, which is what this is all about. And I'm always fascinated, whether they're from the world of entrepreneurship, the world of business, or the world of entertainment, even sometimes the world of activism, and even had some people that have been in the world of theology and all along those lines. So we've had amazing guests during the time that Pod TV has been around, and Pod TV was founded by Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun, as they did that actually during the pandemic. So I think this is now get ready to go in our 6th year of existence, and I've been around for the vast majority of that, and I've definitely enjoyed doing this show, but also producing other shows as well. So it's always fun to hear what folks have got going on in their world. But I'm gonna bring in my guests, and I'll bring in Cherise first, and I'll bring in some other ones as well. But see if they join me. I did see another one that popped in, but they popped out. Maybe they'll pop back in later on. But we'll see how this all goes and everything like that. So, Cherise, have you been following the World Cup? And if so, have you had a team that you're rooting for? I know a lot of people are rooting for the U.S., and I have been a fan in the past of Brazil, so I wouldn't mind them doing well. And it looked like the entire country of Mexico was celebrating their victory against Ecuador, because I did watch that game, and it looked like they were just having one big party as they won 2-0 yesterday, and now they will have to face England on July 5th, the day after the 4th of July. So it'll be interesting to see what they've got going on. But have you been following the World Cup at all? And if so, Who are you rooting for?
Well, I have not been able to watch any games. I've been swamped with work, but I actually, yes, I've been paying attention to who's winning. And of course, I'm going to be rooting for the U.S. I wouldn't root for anyone else. But Brazil has a special place in my husband's heart because he lived there for about 2 years. And so we were excited when they won as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you were excited when they won and everything like that. So did it just you said he lived there for 2 years. Was he working in Brazil or did he just happen to get a opportunity to do some studies there? How did he manage to get to Brazil? Because I know I've got a cousin that loves going to Costa Rica, and I keep saying that he must have a secret family there. That's how I run and joke and everything because he keeps popping in and all along those lines because he is a retired GBI officer and everything like that. He just retired last year, but he had the Georgia Bureau of Investigations for a number of years. But how did uh, what was your husband's connection to Brazil? I think that's my question.
So humanitarian mission. He was there for 2 years and was just serving people for 2 years. So yeah, he lived there, and he was in like the very north part where the Amazon was very, very deep. So he was left alone for quite a while, and he just got to be with the people and loved it.
It sounds like he really loved it. It sounds like he had a good time there and everything like that. But it sounds like you're doing a lot of great stuff in terms of renovating houses. I know that a former president, Carter, used to be big into Habitat for Humanities and
Wow.
other things along those lines. But how did you get into this whole notion of being someone that is renovating houses? I think you're also doing some stuff in real estate, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. So how did you get into this whole field?
I got into it because we were in a really, really deep hole financially. We actually had invested with a family member in a property in Honduras, and it ended up going belly up. So, long story we won't get into there, but we bought a hotel. We bought it. He had the dive shop. We had a dive boat. We had a restaurant and a catamaran, and just it all went belly up. And so we had mortgaged our house. We took out a HELOC. It's called the Home Equity Line of Credit. We were on food stamps at the time because I just quit my job. I had had my fifth baby, and I got to be a stay-at-home mom at that point. And so the agreement was that they would make the HELOC payment while if we mortgaged the house, and they made two payments, and that was it. So we had to dig ourselves out of a very significant financial hole. So we started I started learning about real estate investing. And finally, one day, it was about a year and a half later, that I went to one of the local RIAs, Real Estate Investor Associations, and they said, stop like learning, stop just talking about it, and just go do it. So I literally left that meeting, drove straight to a house because I had my realtor license, drove straight to a house, walked through it, made an offer, they accepted it. And that was our first flip, and we just got into it. And that was about 10 years ago, actually. So I'm sitting in the house, my second house we bought as a flip. We were going to flip it and then ended up doing Airbnb and then ended up doing a rental. And our renters, these last ones destroyed the house, like took a BB gun throughout the entire house and punched holes in cabinets and different things. And so we have spent a long time. The very last thing was our yard. And so they're doing sod as we speak right now. So that's why I look like this. I'm not all done up because I've been out in the yard working.
Yeah, you've been working, and that's a good thing to do. Get that work done and
Yeah.
everything like that. I know that even here in Durham, North Carolina, there have been a lot of people that have taken houses and renovated them. I know that at some point I'm going to try to get the gentleman on that has created a property called Hayti Villages, which is near the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, which is the Hayti Heritage Center. But they've been doing some groundbreaking. As a matter of fact, I went to the groundbreaking about a month ago for that area. That'll be mixed development. I think there'll be some apartments and some regular houses as well. But I just wanted your take because it's not happening in Texas. It's happening in
Yeah.
Florida. It's happening in North Carolina, where a lot of people are finding houses and then either fixing them for themselves or flipping them, and all along those lines. So, what is your take on this whole notion of fixer up kind of houses?
So I love them personally. And so that's probably why we've taken a little too long doing this one. It's a lot of fun. We could have hired a crew. We could have been in and out very quickly. But we were working with insurance and fairness. And so we were waiting for that. But I think, there is a market there. And There's some people that I think take advantage of people in a very not nice way. And so I really feel bad. I've been known to buy spots on local TV shows, the news stations, and say, don't sell to a cash buyer, call me instead, and I'll give you 7 options. One of my options will be cash, because if that's really what they need, then okay. But, there are other options. And so because I'm a licensed realtor and a licensed lender, I can do lots of different things for people. So I think that it is good. It's taking an old house that needs to be fixed up. And I can look around our house that we live in right now, and there's so much that needs to be done. And so a lot of people, it's just, time gets away from them. And so they might not get the opportunity or have the money to fix it up. And so a lot of these people really do help, and they provide a solution. But I think a lot of times they take advantage of people in distress situations. So I am mixed, and I'll always say it depends when it comes to real estate. But I do think that there's a whole area in Salt Lake where I'm from that was really dilapidated. And because of that, they call it gentrified. And that area, it's no longer scary to drive around at night. And it's a really great place. So I think there's some good, and there's also some bad.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you think the biggest mistake that people make when they're thinking about real estate investment? Because I know that you've been featured on some other shows as well, and I'm always interested in hearing people's thoughts around real estate and real estate development. And I know that some people think, hey, I got a little extra income, I can just go ahead and get a house and everything like that. I'm a big fan of generational wealth, and I'll talk about that in a minute and all along those lines. But what is your advice to those that are thinking they want to get into the real estate game?
Do it. Even if you don't have a little, like I actually I coach how to invest in real estate in 8 different ways. So if you have a lot of time and no money, to if you have a lot of money and no time, there are so many different options for you. And most people just think it's they fix and flip or they wholesale or something. But we're getting into multifamily now. I have 2018 doors, and we're looking at another property. We'll add another 100 almost next week. And so that is life-changing as well. And sometimes you can get in, sometimes you can get in with $50,000, $100,000, it just depends for multifamily, but you don't have to do anything. And so then what happens is that they are able to turn around and sell it in about 5 years, and you're going to get a profit from that. So I think, honestly, I've cashed out a lot of my IRAs, and I've turned it into a self-directed IRA, so I can now have control over that money instead of it going like this in the stock market. So tremendous opportunity.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. I have a younger cousin and everything. I'm one of 11 grandkids of my grandparents, and all along those lines. Actually, I just lost an aunt that was the youngest aunt, and she had 6 kids, one of which passed away at a very young age in childbirth. I think she might have been on her 5th or 6th kid herself and everything like that. But my cousin Jonathan has got the family house and everything like that. So he is actually doing some renovations, making sure that things are upgraded and all along those lines. So that's what I meant when I said I'm a big fan of generational wealth, because my mom and her 3 sisters definitely divided the land that they had inherited into different plots. And now that it is, some people are passing on, is going to the next generation and everything like that. So some of those lands are now in the next generation. So I just wanted your thoughts around the importance of maintaining generational wealth and keeping the property in the family if you can.
Yeah, again, it depends. It's breaking my heart to see all these people that, like, my husband, he found out that his 3 great grandfathers, he had like 2,000 acres up in Logan. If I still had that, if he still had that land, but obviously it went to so many different people, and they sold it off, and they had to. My great grandfather founded Mesa, Arizona, and like there's a street after him. If we had that land, it would have been fantastic. And so I think, generational wealth, it exists for some people, and those people that have it are doing very, very well. The other people, like me, have had to rebuild it themselves.
No, that makes sense and everything like that. Now, if you were talking about those fixer-up houses, what is something that you would tell people that if they are looking at a house that maybe was in a, an area that was troubled, or maybe definitely troubled and all along those lines? What are some of the ways that you would have them? What are some warning signs as to whether they should buy the house or not. Because I'm sure that there's some houses that might have rotten wood or don't have the best plumbing, or maybe those are houses that you don't want to invest in, but they might be ways that you can invest in those if you have the right contractors with you and everything like that. Because I know some people will look at a house and they'll see it boarded up and they'll be like, I can't buy that house, but it might be a hidden jewel or everything like that. But what is some advice that you would give to people as they are looking at houses and thinking about getting a fixer up?
Well, my first question is, are you handy, and how much time do you have? Because if you don't have a lot of time and you're not handy, you're going to have to trust somebody else. And so my big advice is you should probably not invest until you have a trusted partner. I have somebody I invested money in, unfortunately, and he's going on 2 years in renovating a single house, which is absolutely ridiculous. So he has had so many different contractors come through, and you have to really be careful of the contractors. And that's a whole nother story we won't get into. So that's my very first advice, is just because they're going to tell you something, they're going to tell you something. Most likely, if they're not reputable, they're going to come in a lot less on cost renovation. And so you're like, oh, that's great, I can afford it. But sometimes the more expensive ones are 100% worth it, because you're going to end up having to pay twice. So it wasn't cheaper. And I hear those stories all the time. So spend your time now developing relationships, interviewing people, going to their sites and seeing what they're doing. Talk to the people, not the people they want to give you, the people that maybe they're working on right now. Find out how long they've been on that site, how long it's taken them, what they've done, what did they not see. So that's the very first thing. The second thing is plumbing and electrical are really important. Where you're at, I'd be... knob and tube might have it, be in existence in some of those homes still. We still find it here in Salt Lake, and we're not that old. And so I think that just knowing what those type of things are, and then anything that you plan to do, add 17 to 30% onto the cost, because all the unknowns, like that book, If You Give a Pig a Pancake, it's going to serve to go with it. If you want serve to go with it, and it's just, it keeps going and going and going and going. We thought we were done with this house, and now we have an electrical issue that we can't figure out. And so that's the type of stuff that you never know, and you have to keep. There's always surprises.
It's interesting you say that, because the job that I work at, the Hayti Heritage Center, there is a new gentleman that is taking one of their jobs. He's program manager, and he just recently bought a house with his partner. I don't know their relationship. I don't know what their relationship is, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, LGBT, whatever. That's irrelevant. But I just know that he told me that after he bought the house and all along those lines, he's already run across a plumbing issue. So that's what he'll be doing during the 4th of July, is trying to figure out this particular situation and all along those lines, because he just got the house, just moved in from where he was living and everything like that. So I think he said it's him and his partner and their cat. So this is the 3 of them right now, but they did run across this issue with the plumbing already, and he's going to try to figure out that. So part of his 4th of July, I'm sure he'll get out to some fireworks and some other celebrations, but part of it will be doing what you're saying, which is trying to get this work fixed so that he can feel comfortable in his house and all along those lines. But I know a lot of times there's people that are taking real estate courses, and sometimes those real estate courses, maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But what is your take on real estate courses? Because I know one thing we've been talking about on this network is this idea of bringing in even some shows around real estate. I know that's something that the network head, Nick Palveda, who is a pension attorney, wants to do. And we've had some new shows, like one about timeshares and one that we just recently launched about Medicare. But I do know that he said that we need a realtor show at some point. So maybe I'll talk to you and some other realtors I know, including my friend Martin Freed, who's a real estate photographer and everything like that. But what is your thoughts around courses? Because a lot of people are like, I'm just going to take a course and then I'll learn how to get into the real estate business.
Yeah, so it's funny because I was really, obviously we were on food stamps 10 years ago. So I didn't want to pay for any type of real estate coaching whatsoever. So I spent a lot of time on YouTube University, we'll call it, right? And so there's one guy that I found, and it's funny because I knew him 10 years ago, and now I see him now, and he's this huge guru now. But back then, he was just doing courses online because trying to get his notoriety, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's fun to watch how he's grown. And so I think that courses are good, but there's nothing that replaces, I call it the ick factor, right? That's my new word for it, that your gut reaction, like you got to go with your gut. If your gut tells you don't do it, then just walk away, no matter what. That place in Honduras, I knew for a fact that we shouldn't do it. And because I let certain people talk me into it, but when I sent that money, and we're talking, it was almost 200,000, right? And when I sent it, I just knew I made a huge mistake. And so if you know walking through that house that it's probably not a good idea, then you should probably walk away. Another thing is, which I didn't mention, is inspections. Pay for the inspections. And I'm not talking, there are so many inspectors out there that are not licensed. Like in the state of Utah, you don't have to be licensed. And so anybody and their brother could go and inspect a home and collect money. I'm looking for the inspector that isn't going to spend just 2 hours, because if they want to spend 2 hours on a condo, great. But if I have a 5,000, 6,000 square foot home and they're going to spend 2 hours, how on earth can you get through everything? You can't. And I see so many inspectors as a realtor. I've seen that all the time. They spend very little time. And the third thing is making sure that you are going through and fact checking all of your stuff, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Those are great advice. Before I bring in our other guest, I do have another guest that will be sharing time with us and all along those lines. But as I bring in Taj Simrit, who is actually currently, I believe, in Greece and everything like that, but he can let us know, because I know he travels around. He is considered a modern a modern Renaissance man. He's written a book called Behold My Soul, a true story about forgiveness and the power of love. So while you're happily married, he is a modern Renaissance man whose journey has been defined by seeking wisdom through experience, and his journey has been defined through these hardships. He even talks about having gone through divorce and some of the other things. So he went through corporate life and fatherhood to divorce, loss, and ultimately transformation. So he even says he found God and himself at a yoga retreat with Sivak Singh, if I'm seeing this name correctly. But we'll hear more about his story as well. But get ready to bring in Taj, who I believe is in Greece. And that's actually a question I've got for both of you and everything about this whole notion of the work-life balance, which I oftentimes talk about this show. I sometimes wonder if it is a truism, if it even exists and everything like that. So, Taj, how are you doing? Am I correct that you're actually in Greece, and actually in Greece, if I remember correctly, that's where you will be coming at us from?
Good evening for me, Mark. Thank you for having me. It's about 11:22, and I heard you talk about soccer before the World Cup. Obviously, I was born and raised in France, so you know who I am supporting.
Yes.
But they happen to have a pretty good team. So I'm going to be watching a soccer match after our podcast. But I'm pretty happy to be here with you.
I appreciate it and everything. Share a little bit about your book and what you've got going on, because I know that you've written this book, A True Story about forgiveness and the power of love. So just share a little bit about that book and share it with both me and Sharice so that we can learn from each other.
Well, I wrote my memoir. It just came out about a year ago on Amazon, and it was like a 2-year project. And to start briefly from the beginning, I was living the American dream, so to speak, lived in America for about 30 years. And then when I was 57 years of age, I decided to divorce my wife, to whom I had been married for about 27 years. And I had a 12-year son at the time, so it was not an easy decision to make. And after that, a period of 3 years when everything went down, I had money from my divorce settlement. We had a couple of houses. Since the topic of your podcast is a lot of houses, all of a sudden we sold one of them. So I had all the money. I was still young. I thought I was a 40-year-old man, except I was 57. So I blew all my money in about 3 years. I ended up being evicted from my luxury condo. I ended up being fired from my job because I had a really bad attitude at that time. And then I filed for bankruptcy, and I ended up sleeping in my car for about 1 year. But that was a beautiful period of my time, because I picked myself up from being all the way down. All of a sudden, I discovered yoga. I started taking a teacher training in Kundalini Yoga. I started to pick myself up, as I said, slowly. And then about 8 years ago, I decided that my American dream was about over, so I became the ultimate minimizer. I just got rid of everything I owned, and I picked up a backpack and I started traveling around the world. That was about 8 years ago, and still counting. So up to about 5 months ago, I had been traveling nonstop. I don't have a home. I don't have any ties. So life is good. I'm enjoying my life. And in that process, I started writing my memoir. So it was about a 2-year process. So as a writer, Helen Sontag said once, writing about your life is a little bit like pulling your own teeth. So that was a lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, but it was a beautiful therapy. And from that moment on, I was traveling in India with my motorbike when my book came out, and the creativity bug hit me a few months ago, and I'm thinking, okay, now it's time to write a novel. So instead of writing a novel, I'm going to write a trilogy of novels. I'm going to challenge myself. So I decided to come to Greece. That was the beginning in October before the winter. I decided to dedicate 10 months of my life to write pretty much 20, 22, 24 days every month, enjoy my life and write a novel. And by the time I leave Greece in November, I will have enough words to fill about 3 books. I mean, it will going to take me a couple of years to edit them and publish them.
Well, what is the fiction book going to be about? And how many of the countries have you visited and everything like that?
Well, it's going to be, I was never into novels. I've always read the self-improvement books for the last 20 years of my life. And my sister mentioned to me, she said, you should be writing a novel. And I said, why? She said, you have a great imagination. That'd be amazing. So I thought about it and I said, okay, why not? I started reading a few novels. So I decided to write, it's like a spiritual novel in the likes of Paulo Coelho, the Alchemist. But it's a little darker. It's my heroine. She's an American woman that has everything, kind of like my Ultima, female version of me. So when you write a novel, you're free to invent character based on your life. So, and a lot of things happen to her. She goes down really bad. She nearly dies several times, and then she picks herself up. So pretty much my own story, my own memoir. But now it's a novel, so I'm a little freer to let go, and I don't write about myself any longer. It's a fascinating experience. I'm enjoying the process.
It sounds like it. And how many countries have you visited, Taj?
Yeah.
I said, how many countries have you visited? Because you said you've traveled around the world.
In the last 8 years, about 30 countries. Right now I've been to about 50 countries, but I'm not satisfied. I want to go to 135 countries before I go on to the other world. I figure out I'm about to turn 69 next week, and I'm in a beautiful shape physically, mentally, emotionally. I have a lot of energy. I found a new passion, which is basically to write books and try to start to make a difference in people's lives. And I want to keep traveling for another 20 years. So I think I'm going to live to 100. And I discovered the Holy Grail. Since you asked me earlier what was my memoir about, my memoir is about me being really in dark places where a lot of people found themselves without knowing it. But I realized that late in life, I was not very conscious for about 6 decades of my life, and little by little, I discovered that there was a supreme intelligence that was governing a universe above and beyond that little square head of mine, above and beyond that Cartesian and stubborn mind of mine. And as soon as I realized that, I started to work on opening my heart, because the topic of my book is about forgiveness, because I discovered when I was in Peru working with shamans doing medicinal plants, a friend of mine handed me a book by Joe Vitale called Zero Limit. If you heard about that book, it talks about Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian practice of reconciliation and forgiveness. And a lot of your listeners have probably heard the 4 sentences: I'm sorry, please forgive me, I thank you, and I love you. And at that time, I was in the Amazon. I was doing ceremonies with psychedelic medicinal plants. So it was a perfect timing for me to experiment with opening my heart and taking responsibility. When you say sorry, you take 100% responsibility for your life, for all the people and all the events in your life. You are the one that attract everything into your life. And then when you say forgive me, you ask divine power to help you forgive all the people that hurt you. But more importantly, to help you forgive yourself. You know, Mark, because a lot of people have suffered drama. I'm not the only one. We all suffer drama in our lives. If we don't remember it, maybe it is in what do you call that, a transgenerational trauma, or if you believe in other lives, it could be trauma from other lives. So if you've been hurt, like, I came from an abusive, home. So when you are hurt, you tend to close your heart because you don't want to be hurt again. And then you spend the entire rest of your life with a closed heart. So that transpires into your career, into your relationship with your coworkers, with your bosses, of course, with your spouse, with your children. So when I discovered that I had to forgive myself first and foremost, because all the self-blame, all the shame that you feel, all the guilt, you have to release that weight. So it doesn't matter what the crime is. I repeat this for your listeners. It doesn't matter how big the crime is. You have to forgive the people that hurt you. Because if you don't, you're going to carry that weight on your shoulder for the rest of your life. So this is what I discovered when I was in the Amazon. I started opening my heart to love. I took responsibility for my life. I realized that I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. This is an English writer that said that. So once you start taking responsibility and you forgive yourself, you forgive all the people that hurt you, you forgive yourself for all the people that you harmed, and then now you say thank you. To me, that was a hallelujah moment. I had never been grateful in my life. All of a sudden, I felt great and I felt full, grateful. I wake up every morning and I thank God, or whatever you want to call it. I thank the supreme power for giving me health, for giving me vitality, for giving me a mind. So, and then once you do that, responsibility, forgiveness, and gratitude, now you can start open the universe you fill it in with love. You start opening that heart, that jewel box inside right here, laying in the middle of your chest. Now you have a lock. You open it and love starts pouring out. And it's a beautiful feeling because now you have no resentment. You have forgiven everybody in your life. You have forgiven yourself. And you believe there's a higher power that's taking care of you, so you are safe.
Yeah.
Did I answer?
Yeah, good answer. I appreciate that and everything. Hey, Sharice, along those same lines, because I've had some friends of mine that have been in the construction business, including some women in the construction business, and we know that sometimes women aren't always given the respect that they need, even in the real estate business. So I just wanted your take on that. I'm going to bring in Mr. Curtis as well, because he's a transformational leader also. But I just wanted your take, because I do know that there are a number of women. Like I said, my friend is actually a real estate agent here in North Carolina, and my good friend is actually her husband, who is a real estate photographer. He used to do photography for events and for sports events when they lived in Miami, and that's my friend Martin Freed and everything like that. But I was just wondering, because I do know that sometimes, even though we see all those real estate signs with a lot of women being the agents, but I don't know that y'all always get the respect that y'all deserve in the industry and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on the industry from the perspective of being a woman leader.
So great question, Greg. There's actually a book. I'm not even going to give you the title because it's so shocking, but I am writing a book that talks about that. And I've been in the corporate world, proprietary education world, as well as real estate. And I think that we do get respect. I think things have changed for clients that are hiring you. But colleagues, I have been called kiddo, I've been called sweetie, I've been, all these different things by these older gentlemen. And I just thought, no, I don't appreciate that. Or I've been in the business for 30 years, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm like, okay, yeah, so have I. So what's your point? And so there really is still some discrimination there, unfortunately. But I think in the overall, it has changed quite a bit. And I think real estate is a lot more giving than some of the other industries definitely that I've been in.
Man, that makes a lot of sense because there was a show that we used to have here called it was actually Tracy Mebane, and she has a company called Pink Hammer because she actually does construction and all along those lines, and she's here in the area. But she talked about what you just said because she remembers that some of the people that she would be hiring, and yes, she was hiring some of these people in the housing business and everything, that they would treat her as if she was the secretary and not actually the boss and everything like that. So she was actually doing some construction work in terms of building the buildings, not just the real estate sales, but also construction. And she wasn't always treated as respectfully as she should have been, even though she was the boss, because some people were thinking that she was the secretary or the some other underling. And I'm not knocking it because I'm basically a site coordinator at my cultural arts center, even though I'm a historian as well. But definitely, so I'm not knocking those jobs that some people may consider to be lesser, because I don't know that there is such a thing as a lesser job. All jobs are important and everything like that. But I just wanted, did you run across that in the real estate space?
Yeah, I have. And definitely in construction, absolutely. There is definitely, as a female that has their own company and things, yes, they do try to take you and sometimes try to take advantage of you more. And so if you have to stand your ground, a good example with these sod people that just laid the sod here, when they arrived, you have to be confident and you have to not be afraid to speak your mind, because otherwise you definitely will get run over and taken advantage of 100%. The other side of that, though, they will sometimes give you breaks that maybe the men don't necessarily get as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We're being joined by Ellis as well, and he's the founder of Transform Design, and he's gone through 20 years of entrepreneurship and church leadership. So he's also a church leader, and I'm oftentimes fascinated by that. I know that there was a church that actually started at the Hayti Heritage Center, Christ Central, and then they moved to another location. I think that's Durham Nativity, and they just recently bought a building. So they were literally a planter church, and now they are getting ready to go through growth. And I think after the pandemic, so over the last 8 years, they've now finally got their own building and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on what part of what we talk about on this show and other shows is entrepreneurship and leadership. And I know that's something you're big on, Ellis. So what do you see as the keys to entrepreneurship and leadership? Because everybody thinks that they're a leader and not everybody is a leader. So what do you see as the key to leadership and everything like that?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Mark. Appreciate that. My name is Elias Curtis. First and foremost, I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather, and all glory to God. I praise Him every day. So that's the mentality that I have when, especially taking it into business. So if we're talking leadership, we're talking business, we're talking relationships, whatnot, it really comes down to being humble, right? Serving from behind, like as far as leadership, it's like you got to be that example. And it's also the caring part of it. So, if you care about people and you want to see them do well and succeed and in anything in life, then it really is being able to be that example to show them what that looks like. There's so much to unpack there, man. But hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, that answered it. And this is for all three of you. What do you think as some of the lessons that you've learned from your building your businesses? Because all three of you in one form or another are business leaders, even the author and all along those lines. So what is some of the lessons that you have learned from your businesses and everything like that? So I'll start with Sharice, but I want to hear from Todd and Ellis as well. So what are some of the lessons you have learned about life from the businesses that you have created?
The big thing I've learned from jumping from corporate to entrepreneurship is that you can really accomplish anything you set your mind to. And that really what's between your ears is what's holding you back more than anything. I never thought the money that I've been able to make financially or the lives I've been able to help, to change, whatever, is so much broader now that I have my own companies. I also have gotten into a few other things besides real estate. And so I think that that's the part that you really can enjoy the life that you have. But I also have to realize that it can start to control you if you don't manage it correctly.
Before I get to Ellis and everything along those lines, a follow-up question for you, Sharice. How much do you think it is that you are able to maintain multiple businesses? Because I've got a friend of mine who is Uber driver. I had to remember which of the car companies he works for, but he's also a funk musician, and he's done a number of other businesses as well. And I know a lot of people that will think that they can only do one business at a time, but then I know people like you that have multiple businesses and all in that space. So how much do you think it is important to have multiple streams of income, and can you have more than one job and be successful at it?
So I think the first thing is you need to like, focus on the one, build that, and then you can move on to the next one. I had one person say that you need to kill all your babies but one, and I have 6 kids, so I'm not going to kill any of my babies, right? And so I think I coach people in real estate, relationships, and business. And so those are 3 completely different things, but they're also they have similarities. And so I think that making sure that you don't try to spread yourself too thin. It is very easy to do, and you have to trust other people. I have hired people and just said, look, I need you to run this, and then you manage them. And so trusting yourself and then trusting other people around you, I think is important.
Hey, Ellis, along those same lines, I have been part of jobs in both the profit and the nonprofit world, and sometimes it's the whole conversation of micro or macro managing, and some people don't want to give you enough autonomy to actually have your own role if you are working with them and everything like that. So I'm sure you've dealt with that as well. So what is your thoughts around businesses, and particularly those business leaders that sometimes want to have their hands in all of the pots, and sometimes they're not effectively letting people dictate whatever they're supposed to be responsible for, whether that's accounting, whether that's business planning, or whatever their job may be within the company and everything like that. We can use the restaurants as an example. If you got a good cook, you don't need to be trying to be the cook yourself and everything like that. But I was just wondering your take on some of these folks that want to have too much control in their business lives.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, I mean, when I was in corporate world, to Teresa's point, I mean, it's one of those things where, we just, we're created for more, right? We're able to do more than what we're kind of like boxed in to do. And so it can come off very suffocating, right? So it's like you have to break out of that. It's like, it's in our name, Transform Design, right? So when my wife and I started the company in 2009, we were big on transformation. Seeing the caterpillar turn into a butterfly. And that's kind of been a beautiful thing, a beautiful picture, if you will, or illustration of like, not necessarily people, but also just businesses as well. So yeah, I mean, be able to just, that micromanagement is hard, especially when it's like someone has their finger on you and telling you what to do all day, and it's tough, right? But at the same time, if you want to have your own business and be independent, then that takes a lot of work to do as well. But at least you have that flexibility in that time to be able to do things that you love at the time you like to do it. So I think that's just more beneficial in that context.
That makes sense, and I'm gonna come back to Taj in a minute. Before I come back to Taj and all on those lines, I was just curious for both you, Cherise, and you, Ellis, and everything like that. Both of you are part of a successful relationship. I actually just turned 64, actually, ironically today, and everything along those lines. And no, wasn't doing anything big on my birthday because it fell on the middle of the week, so I'll probably do my celebrating later on in the weekend, all along those lines. But I was just wondering, how are y'all able to balance? One of the things I talk about on this show quite often is that notion of the work-life balance. And it seems to me that both of you are in successful relationships, meaning you, Ellis, and you, Cherise, and everything. So how are you able to balance that work-life balance? And particularly since both of you have kids, and it seems like multiple kids and everything like that. So I'll start with you, Cherise, but I definitely want to hear from Ellis as well. How do you do that whole work-life balance thing?
Oh, I don't believe in balance anymore. Like, it's just not realistic, right? But you have to make time for each other. My husband and I, a good example, we were driving home. We went out to dinner with some friends that are in town from out of state. And I left my car at his location, and then we drove to where we needed to be because it was about 40 minutes away, and his place was about 20 minutes. And we drove all the way home. So it's 10:30 at night, and we get home, and I go, we left my car. And so, it's going to be an hour round trip. And so that was the time that I'm so used to spending so much time on my computer, on my phone with clients. And my husband, his biggest pet peeve is when we're in the car, I'm not focused on him. And so, it's hard. It's hard to do, but you have to schedule some time with each other. You have to make sure that you're still laughing together. You're still doing things with each other. You're still communicating with each other. It gets awkward sometimes when you're running with all these other kids and all these different things that are happening with all the different businesses. And that sometimes you're like, I don't remember what to say to you anymore. And so, we took a vacation alone together last year for the first time in a while. Usually it's with all of our kids. And that was weird, for the first day or so. And then we really had a great time. And so spending time, you have to make sure that you're spending quality time. I love the people that have a date night every single week. That is their sacred time, only them. And it could be they lock the doors in their room and, they have dinner in their room or whatever. I don't care. But making time for each other and making sure that you're communicating with each other is essential.
That makes sense. How about you, Ellis? I was telling earlier, Sharice, that one of my coworkers is a newer coworker at the Cultural Arts Center I work at. He just recently bought a house. What I didn't say in our previous conversation about that coworker is that he and his partner and their cat, they've decided that they have bought this new house, but they also need to have their own space, even in that old house and everything. So we all know about that whole notion of the man's room, and sometimes women need the women's room as well and everything like that. So I just wondered, how do you deal with that, the whole work-life balance, and do you need your own space even in your house? Because I know that he said, we realize that, we may share a bedroom sometimes, but sometimes we need to have our own separate space.
Yeah, I mean, being married for 18 years, that's how marriage life is. You get to know each other very well. You know your strengths, your weaknesses, and it's really working through all of that. But I had the privilege to be able to work with my wife side by side with her in the business since the beginning. So the expectations are there. We understand work needs to get done, but it really is being intentional and saying, okay, I need to set time aside for my wife, whether we got to go on a hiking trip or date night or just go out and spend time together. So that's very, very important and healthy, right? Because I don't want to be working all day long and I don't pay any mind to my wife. That wouldn't be good. And so we, come to an agreement on how we're going to work things out, and it works out. So it's that communication, and then just prioritizing that, what's valuable to you, and then making
that makes sense and everything like that. Hey, Todd, you had the flip side of that because you went through divorce and then maybe you're in a new harmonious kind of space with the whole yoga, but also new relationships and everything like that. So I am one of those people that believes in learning lessons from the past mistakes. So sometimes we don't do that all that well because I'm still single even at 64 as of today and everything like that. But I know that sometimes we don't always learn the lessons, and sometimes we even go back and repeating the same mistakes that we made and everything like that. So what is some of the lessons that you learned from the bad situation, and there were probably times that it was a good situation, but did you learn from the relationship even after it ended that you might be bringing into your new relationships?
Well, the lesson I learned, I was married for 27 years, and as Elias mentioned, first he talked earlier about humility. So you have to be humble in a relationship. But the most important thing in a relationship is a thing that we were lacking, my wife, my ex and I, because for we were married for 27 years and we had a 12-year-old son. That means that for 15 years, we were living together, traveling, and we didn't want to have any kids at that time. That was our own decision. By the time my ex had my son, she was 44 years of age, and so was I. We were only about 6 weeks apart. So what happened is the first 7 years, that's when the kid, before the child started building his own personality, the first 7 years were great. And after that, we stopped communicating altogether. So when there is no communication in a marriage, when you stop talking about things, you stop talking about problems, you stop laughing, you stop inviting friends to your home, you stop singing together, you stop having sex. I mean, what is there left? So that's where I was. I mean, I didn't want to leave my son behind when he was 12. That hurt me. That was the hardest thing I ever did, but I could not take anymore. I was it was a jail sentence. Now, you have to understand something. I grew up in an abusive childhood where there was not a lot of respect for women. My dad didn't have respect for my mom. So what is a poor kid like me to do? Well, you end up spending your whole life without respecting women. So this is something that you have to work toward, you have to learn. So the last 10 years, I've been divorced now about 12 years. The last 12 years, I've been picking myself up, start to open up my heart, start to understand that women, I mean, an old guru from India said that women are 15 times superior to men. I mean, not in a purely physical sense, of course, but from an emotional. Look at what a woman, somebody like Charis, look at she's able to do. She has a career and she has to take care of her husband. She has to cook and she has to wash the dishes and she has to take care of the kids. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility in a woman nowadays. So once you understand that, and a woman has a power to turn, this is what the guru said, to turn blood into milk. I mean, imagine that, Mark, Elias, imagine if us men could turn blood into milk. No, we cannot do that. So along the way, I learned through my travel, through meeting a lot of women, I learned to respect them, to start respecting them. But there was a period where I had zero respect. So this is you have to be a work in progress. You have to be willing to evolve. You have to learn. You have to, pick up self-improvement books, and you have to get out of your head and understand that there is something more powerful than you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Ellis, just really quickly, and everybody else wants to put their information in, I can make a banner and it can go across the screen as we're talking, and all along those lines so folks can know how to reach you and everything like that. But one of the things that we talk about quite often on this show, the online dinner party and everything like that, is the notion of the inner critic and everything like that. I just mentioned that I'm still single at 64, and I've known that there have been times where there have been jobs and even relationships that I have talked myself out of and everything like that. Some people call it the imposter syndrome. Some people call it the inner critic and everything like that. But I was just wondering, and this is for all of you, but I'll start with you, Ellis, but I definitely want to hear from Charis and Taj. How did you get past that? Because I know there have been jobs that I should have gone for, probably even relationships that I should have gone for, but I would have that whole conversation about reasons that I shouldn't go for it. And by the time I talked myself into it, the opportunity and or the romance had left the door and everything like that. So how did you deal with that? Because all of you seem to be very self-confident, and maybe y'all are just doing a good job of acting. I do have friends that are actors, so I know that there is such a thing as good acting and everything like that. So how did you get past that imposter syndrome as a business leader? So I'll start with you, Ellis, but I want to hear from Charis and Todd as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, as we all know, life can be hard, right? I mean, we all have our struggles, we all have our challenges that we face living in this world. And so a lot of times we just don't know how to handle that. A lot of it, if we keep it real. So there's a lot of ways to deal with it, to each his own. But for me personally, it really is prayer, right? It's really going before God and praying and asking for help and really getting into that, to deal with myself the way that I need to. And from that, my confidence is in God, right? My hope is in Him, my trust is in Him. And it really changes things for me because now it takes the focus off myself, puts it on Him. So now that I can go ahead and move forward, now I'm not having to beat myself up every day about things that are happening or perhaps things that I'm struggling with within my own heart. And so that's what I would end up doing, is taking it to God.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Charis? How do you deal with it and everything like that? And maybe it's similar to what Ellis does, but I definitely am a believer. I consider myself more spiritual than religious, and part of that is because I think some religions, not saying all religion, but some religions get too caught up in the church of personality, and I'll just leave it at that and everything like that. But I was just wondering, how do you deal with that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, well, Elias, thank you. It is all about religion. And for me, my trust in God. And I do believe, because of what I've gone through, because I did go through divorce and I did get remarried, that it is tough. And so I did write a book called Flipping the Iceberg for that reason. It is for anybody who's single or divorced. That my whole mission of that was exactly, it took me 2 years. I feel it was divinely inspired because we do have to heal ourselves. We do all have, I don't want to use the word trauma, but I will, that we all have experiences in our life that have caused us to have that imposter syndrome or to have something else. And so the first part of that book talks about healing yourself so you can make healthy decisions, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be at work. So because of that, I totally healed myself in going through the book because it forced me to write a framework for it. And then the second part would be, once you figure that out, now how do you, flip the iceberg. 10% you see above water, 90% you see below. So if you can flip it, now you can figure out what your own traumas and icebergs are, and then you can get to know your person that you think you want to spend the rest of your life with. So there's a whole activity and list to go through about the person you think you're going to marry, because the first one, I love him dearly as a person, but it was a huge facade. And even the second one, the person I thought I married is different than the person I did marry, and we're committed to making it work. And that's why my second book is After You Say I Do. And so everyone has that imposter syndrome. It's just, what do you do with that? And do you trust yourself enough? And so I'm on a mission to save marriages before and after I do for that reason. So it really is
Just really quickly, Sharice, before I get to Taj and everything like that, what do you think the success is to a successful relationship? Y'all kind of alluded to it, because I definitely am a big believer in communication, even in relationships with your parents. I know that I talked earlier today to my mom, and I talk to her regularly, even though she is kind of the rock of my life, along with my dad and other family members. I'd even say to some degree, I'm a big supporter of my young nephews. I don't have any kids of my own, but the oldest nephew just graduated high school about 2 weeks ago, and everything like that. But I'm definitely looking forward to him having a successful career as an adult as he get ready to go off to college, and then we'll see where he goes from there. But I know he wants to be an activist lawyer and everything like that. But I know communication is what most people say, but what do you think is the key to a successful relationship? I've also heard play, which a lot of people forget about, and I think even Ellis kind of referred to that as well. But what do you think are the keys to a successful relationship, whether that's a marriage or a romance, dating romance, or whatever the relationship may be, even those that are in other kinds of relationships like the LGBT community and everything like that? But what do you think are the keys to successful relationships?
One thing I really think one of the biggest reasons for divorce, and again, I've been there, is selfishness. And so if we can serve the other person, you know what, when my husband or anybody, when you go serve somebody like he did in Brazil for those 2 years, when you're serving people, you fall in love with them. And because you're getting out of your own head, you're getting out of your own self. One of the biggest things, my husband, because I have twins that are 26, neither one of them are married. And I don't want to talk negative I love them dearly, but if you're always focused on yourself, and I shouldn't say always, but when you are focused on yourself because there's nobody else, it is easy to become involved with yourself. And so if you can go serve other people, you can go and do other things, then I really do think that is a huge part of success, because there's many times, like there was a little bit that I told my husband I loved him, I just didn't like him, right? And we go through stages where you have to learn. So then if it's like, okay, well, how can I start serving him? Then you fall in love with him again, right? And so I think that's the one that's not talked about very often, is service and selflessness.
That's not talked about a lot. But the other thing that I've kind of alluded to, and I want to hear from you, Sharice, but I also want to hear from Ellis, and then I've got a question for Taj, like I just mentioned earlier and everything like that. But how often do you think that we don't pay attention to the warning signals and everything like that? I know that there have been times that I have been in relationships, and the warning signals could have been like a brick falling on my head, that I should have known the signals already, but I was too enamored or too whatever and caught up in the situation that even though the signals were practically slapping me in the face, I was wanting to ignore them. And sometimes they might even happen more than one time, because we do have a habit of falling into the same traps over and over again and everything like that. So I just wondered, how much do we ignore the warning signals when they happen? Because I know that in hindsight, there were a couple times that after the relationship, I'm going like, I should have seen that. That was like a Mack truck that was running me over and everything like that. But at the time, I was enamored and ignored them. And I'm sure both you and Ellis probably had that before you found your, in your case, the king of your life, and in his case, the queen of his life and everything like that. But definitely, how did you deal with that? Because I know that a lot of times we see the warning signals and we ignore them, even though, like I said, it might be a truck getting ready to run us over.
Okay, that's where the ick factor, like I've now given it a name, and I've given it a name because now it gives me permission to say no without thinking about it anymore. Just like, when you're little and they say don't do drugs or just say no. Well, now if I say it's the ick factor, I just have to say no. And so I was kneeling over the altar with my first husband when I literally heard a voice that said, Sharice, get up and run. It was as clear as you are talking to me. And I looked around, nobody was around me. I thought maybe that was my dad. He was on the other side of the room and just smiling, right? So I knew who it was, and yet I still said yes. And so I struggled for 15 years in that first marriage because I truly did try to make it work, and lots of stuff happened. But I knew it was wrong, and I married him, right? And so we have 4 beautiful kids. I don't regret any of that. We get along very, very well. But if you have that, it is. And again, in my book, I talk about how your heart, your gut, and your brain are all interconnected, and they're working together, and they're working through things before you can logically give it a purpose and give it something to say. So if you can like identify that, then you can move on more quickly than not.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Alyssa? You've been in a very happy relationship. Maybe you didn't have that ick factor with the current wife, but maybe you like Sharice. Maybe you had a divorce or some other bad relationships before you got this wife of yours that you've had for multiple years and everything like that. But how did you avoid those trains that were about to run you over? Because I'm sure even in the dating world, when you were a young man, that you were probably sitting there and going like, this is not the one for me and everything like that, but you were caught up in the moment and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, I do got to step off right after this, but I'll go ahead and answer the question. But please follow me, stay connected, and thank you for having me on. But to answer that question, I mean, marriage is hard, right? And so it's getting to know the person and working through things, and over time we even change in certain ways, and being able to adjust when we have to, and love, right? Love, it helps a lot, right? And that sacrificial love and that humility and that wanting to serve the other person, it's very, very, those are virtues and values that you should always consider on a daily basis. It's putting the other person higher than yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, consequences, challenges, conflict, they all happen. But what do we do when they happen, right? Where do we run to, and what do we do to deal with forgiveness and perhaps maybe bitterness within our hearts towards someone else? It's really addressing that heart and getting into that and working through that. So
that makes sense. And I know you got to get ready to bounce and everything like that. There is a question I ask all my guests, and this is a quick question, and you kind of alluded to one of them because we got to run it across the screen, which is how people can reach you and everything like that. But one of the questions I ask all my guests, because this is a global network, Pod TV is and everything like that, and I'm one of those people that believes that we can have our own ministry in our own ways. We don't have to be ministers and everything like that. So one thing that I get all my guests to do is to give a message of positivity that they want to share with our global audience. So before you leave, Ellis, I would love to hear your message of positivity. And last but not least, I'd love to hear from guests something that our audience would be surprised to know about them. Like I've joked that I had a friend who was actually an ex, and we're now still good friends, and I'll actually be on a board meeting with her because she's got me recruited to be a board of her artistic organization that's also faith-based and all along those lines. But she was going to go into skydiving. I'm sorry, to me, planes are to go from point A to point B. They're not to fall out of, so I'm not going to fall out of a plane and everything. But I have thought about whitewater rafting. I have thought about doing other things that might be interesting, including going hot air balloon, even though that would be kind of crazy as well. But what's something that people would be surprised to know about you that they haven't learned about now? Like I'm big into word puzzles. Like I used to do words with friends, and even at home we'll do certain games like spinners, which is almost like a form of dominoes and everything like that. So I do come from a family of gamers in that sense. But what's something that people would be surprised to know about you, maybe a hobby and interest or something along those lines, and your message of positivity?
Enjoy the ride. You have your life, right? You just enjoy what you do, love what you do, help others, think outside yourself, really go for it and not give up.
Yep. And what's something people would be surprised, and then I'll let you bounce off, but what's something people would be surprised to know about you as a hobby or an
interest? I love going hiking. I love nature. I like getting out there because, being in front of a computer all day and working over the internet, it can be very, very captivating. And so going out into nature and exploring, a breeze or, ocean, going to the ocean or going to, different places in nature really helps with that. So that's what I will leave with for now.
Appreciate you. You're a great guest. Hopefully we'll get you back on some other shows as well, but I do appreciate you being on. And actually you led into the question I had for Todd, which is, I'm a big fan of Mother Nature. I haven't been out except for once because it's hot. It's like 100 degrees out here today and everything like that. But I'm a big fan of nature. A friend of mine turned me on to the app Merlin, which you can actually listen to and learn the different bird sounds and all along those lines. So Todd, as one who's now gotten into the yoga, how important is Mother nature to you and everything like that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around nature, because I am a fan of Mother Nature and think that sometimes we don't pay enough attention to it, including when it is trying to give us messages. Because I'm convinced that Mother Nature was telling us about 9/11, and Mother Nature was telling us about COVID well before it happened and everything like that, if we'd actually been just listening to the messages that were being sent from Mother Nature. But that's just my opinion. But I was just wondering your take on Mother Nature and the importance of Mother Nature.
Mother Nature. Oh my God, there's two famous people that talk about that. Rembrandt say, serve one master, nature. And Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous architect, said, I believe in God, only I spell it nature. Well, as far as my case is concerned, nature was my salvation. Because I grew up and I didn't believe in God. I was an atheist for 20, 30 years of my life. You know, I grew up as a Catholic boy. I did my confirmation when I was 12. Then I didn't believe in all that stuff. So I decided to become an atheist. And throughout my travels, I meet a lot of people that don't believe in God, that don't believe in anything. So also, Albert Einstein said there's two ways to live your life. You could live your life like everything is a miracle, or you could live your life like nothing is a miracle. So when I was 10, 12 years old and I had a lot of problems at home, I lived by the sea, so I would always go walking in nature, surrounded by trees, and always go swimming, and that saved me. Now later on, after I got tired of being an atheist, because I realized that there was something else out there, but I didn't know what it was. So I was an agnostic. And then when I started doing yoga and I started going inside and silence the noise in my head and start doing meditation, then I understood there was a God. And it doesn't matter what you call it. You know, it doesn't matter if you spell it God or nature or Buddha or Jesus or Allah. It doesn't matter. What matters is you get out of your own little head and realize that supreme intelligence that's all around us. So nature for me has always been my holy grail. It's always been my salvation. And now I am in Greece, in a beautiful island. I go walking all the time. I go swimming, and thank God for that. So I'm very grateful for nature.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate that. It's interesting you say that. I remember when my dad was probably, he was even younger than I was. It might have been when he was in his 50s or something like that. He invited me and my younger brother to watch a ABC special. I think it might have even been Ted Koppel or Peter Jennings, or one of our great anchors of the past and everything like that. But it was about what you just said, which is this notion that a lot of the religions, and I think you kind of alluded to it, Cherise, have the same principles, but it's the extremes that get in the way and everything like that. But a lot of, whether it's Buddhist or Christian or Hindu, Eastern or Western religions, a lot of them have the basic core principles of respect your parents, respect Mother Nature, respect your neighbors, and everything like that. And it's probably the extreme elements that are the ones that get us into trouble and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that, because I'm guessing that Cherise, and you may be, I don't know for a fact, but you said you had been spending some time in Utah and everything like that, so you may even be a member of the Mormon faith. Not that that's important or not, but I know Nick Palveda, one of our founders, is a member of that faith and all along those lines. But do you agree that sometimes that we don't pay enough attention to the similarities that religion have? Because some religions have that my way or the highway kind of attitude, even though they are probably more similar than they are dissimilar.
Yeah, I think I believe we're all brothers and sisters on this planet, and so we're all children of God. And so, yeah, I mean, a good example was just recently when they took the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints off as being Christian, identified, the Department of War guy, and 2 days later it was back on because there was so much backlash. Because to say that the LDS faith is not Christian when Jesus Christ is in the name, yeah, that's an issue. And so I do think that we do need to find more commonalities instead of differences, especially in this world and how we have a hard time getting along anymore.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I have to tease you about that as well because there was and I stumbled across it, I think, literally a year ago. And I don't know if you've ever watched it, but there was a popular real estate show that was actually featuring Mormon real estate agents and everything like that. That was on the air and everything like that. So I don't know if you're familiar with that show, but I found it quite humorous because it definitely had some typical soap opera kind of elements, for lack of a better term.
Oh, yeah. So I have some interest. I used to be a host of a national TV show. So, I mean, I see the behind the scenes stuff, and it's so much drama. It's all writing, it's all scripts and acting, and a heck of a lot of editing. Like, I can do a 4-hour, what's it called, filming, and yet they can take that 4 hours somehow and like cut it down into 5 minutes. So you're missing a lot, and you're missing, and so they can tailor however they want to have that story go. And so that's the frustration you see of the Mormon wives, the real lives of Mormon wives. They're not even LDS people anymore, and so like to call them Mormon, they're not members of our church anymore, our faith. And so it's very interesting to see that part of life, and unfortunately it sells. So
It definitely sells and everything like that. Just really quickly, what is your thoughts? Because I remember I mentioned that it is a different housing development now, but down the street from my cultural arts center was some houses that were being developed. They've been developed under a new construction company now, but this was maybe several years ago. I remember talking to one of the construction workers, and he was warning us, or me and another person at the bus stop, because I go to catch mass transit to get around, that we might want to be careful when that house in bad weather came, because he was saying that some of the newer houses are also very prefab and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that, because he was basically like, it's just going to take a good headwind, and these houses that we're putting up might be falling down because of some of the prefab material that exists. So I just wanted your take on some of this prefab material that exists, and is it overly used by our construction companies?
Well, I think it's pride in our work, right? I always talk about the 1950s. If you want to buy a solid home, 1920s to 1950s, that is a solid home, because they took pride in their work. Look at the buildings downtown, how they're all intricate with all this stuff. And now they're just these modern straight lines because you got to put it up really fast. So I think we need to remember that there are still building codes that people have to pass and to get a certificate of occupancy. But there is a concern. Like, I have one of my clients' mothers, so I did not sell her the home. She moved in and they couldn't figure out why it was so hot all the time. And they finally found out that they forgot to put insulation in the house. That's a problem. And so how did the city inspector miss that? How did different things? So I don't think that a strong headwind is going to probably collapse a house. But, I do think that the workmanship nowadays is way more shoddy than it ever was before.
What is your thoughts around historical preservation? Because I mentioned the center that I work at was a old converted church. It was actually started first as a brush arbor when the freed slaves bought the land, and then they built a log cabin. Yes, they literally built a log cabin probably in the 1880s, and then eventually it became a church. And then the church, during urban renewal, moved, and that's when we became the Cultural Arts Center that is now celebrating its 51st anniversary and everything along those lines. But I do know that right now there was a company, I think out of Atlanta, that was doing renovations of the steeple, well, not so much the steeple, but some of the upper parts of what was the church. The bell has been taken down, and it's been down for a number of years. Actually, the bell, because I'm a historian as well, and the bell is actually in our storage room that we are going through and finding all kinds of things, including those. We found an entire record collection from like the 70s and everything like that, because it had Eric and Rakim, and it had Michael Jackson, and it had the Commodores, and a bunch of other stuff. And we found like about 5 or 6 art collections, like literally art shows that were stored and put away and everything like that. But I just wanted your thoughts, because I am a big fan of the Historic Preservation Society here in Durham, but just preservation in general, partially because that's my job. But what is your thoughts around historical preservation?
I think it's so important, and it's breaking my heart, because I was actually downtown Salt Lake recently, and I looked. There's a thing called ZCMI. So it used to be Zion's Commercial Mercantile Incorporated. I don't know what it stood for, but it was like this old store that everyone went to, all the pioneers, they built it. So it started in the 1800s, and then on the right side of this building, it said 1999. And so the face is still there, but everything has been built around it. And so as I'm starting to look at all these buildings, I'm like, I'm so sad, because a lot of the buildings are being taken down. And So there was one, it was the Provo Tabernacle in Provo, Utah, and there was a fire. The LDS Church took it, and it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we call it LDS. And so the LDS Church kept the outside, and then they renovated the entire inside. And so it still looks the same on the outside, but of course on the inside it had to be renovated. I think the Cathedral Notre Dame, or when it was on fire, they kind of did the same thing as they're trying to renovate. To me, there's so much history and pride in that stuff that I really think it should be. All these buildings and, everyone's tearing everything down and building up new. It really does break my heart because our children today don't have any pride or history in what was before them. If we just continue to put these modern buildings with these straight lines that in my opinion are ugly. And so my opinion only, you can hate mail me if you want, but it's really sad to me. And I think that the history is going away because of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey, Teresa, and then I've got another question for Todd, and then we'll get ready to wrap up shortly and all along those lines. But what is your thoughts around houses that are also not only renovated, but also kind of like retrofitted? Because I know that here in Durham, there is a group of athletes, former Duke players. Brian Davis was one of them. Grant Hill, who had a successful NBA career, was another one. And they took over what was the old tobacco warehouses and converted those into apartments. So there's definitely, and I know that's happened in Utah, it's happened in Atlanta, it's happened in a number of places where they will take these historical buildings and retrofit them for a more modern purpose and everything like that. So what is your take on that?
I think that that's very important. So again, Salt Lake Temple, downtown Salt Lake, they have spent, it was only supposed to be a 3-year project or something. I think they've been doing 7 years, but they completely dug very much, like very, very far down and redid the entire foundation and put in earthquake type stuff. There are a lot of buildings that were not built very well, or they were built, especially back where you are probably, they could be very dangerous. And so if you could retrofit them and fix them, that makes sense. Is that a lot more expensive? It is. And so I understand why people are tearing homes down. But if we could find, a happy medium, but I do think it's important.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Hey, Todd, just really quickly, because you've traveled the world, what are some of the historical buildings that you have found in your travels that you really have enjoyed and everything like that? And I know that Greece, because actually when I was a youngster, my dad was stationed in the Air Force and everything like that. So as a infant, I think I moved when I was like 6 months old or something like that. And Mom said I lived in Turkey till I was like 3. She was actually telling me that I was living in a town. I think she said it was Yalova. That was the town that was not that far from Istanbul, and she was saying that I think Dad was stationed at Kermasal or something along those lines and all in that space. But I know that I have no memory of that because I was all of about 3 months to 3 years old. So those are not the greatest memories that you have. I do understand from hypnosis that you might be able to get those memories back and everything. But I think my earliest memories are probably when I'm 64 now, but probably when my years of like later elementary school, like maybe around 9 and 10 years old. I might have some memories of them, but I definitely don't have any memories of my infant years and everything like that. But what are some of the historical buildings that you were proud to see? And maybe you've got some better memories than I do of your youth, because some people are got better abilities to reach into their young mind.
What the question was, what country am I enjoying?
No, what historical places have you really enjoyed? We were talking about historical landmarks. I was wondering if there was any historical landmarks in Greece or any of the other places that you have visited.
Oh, I am a big student of mythology, so everything that has to do with architecture, everything that has to do with all the Greeks, the Greek gods and the goddesses. So while I was in Chios, I spent the winter 5 months in Chios. Chios is right next to Turkey. So I had purchased a scooter, so it was easy to put the scooter on the ferry, and I spent about 9 days going all around Turkey. Basically, what I was doing is visiting all the archaeological sites. I rode about 1,000 kilometers in 9 days, and I visited about 15 or 20 different sites. So I totally love the history of, and then I ended up, when my son came to visit me in Kyiv for a few weeks, then we went to Athens together. I had never been to Athens. So imagine if you've ever been to Athens, it's a beautiful city. You're up on a hill. There's so much history. There's thousands of years of history. I love Greece, to be honest with you. I grew up in the south of France, so I was always on the Mediterranean, but I had never been to Greece. So that has always been one of the dreams of my life to come to Greece. And I'm in love with Greece. I like the food. The people are okay. They don't speak a lot of English, but they leave you alone. You know, they have a good spirit. They're very family orientated. You know, one of the 5 zones, you heard about the 5 blue zones. What's his name? I think David Brunev wrote a book about the 5 blue zones, the 5 different places in the world where people live to be centenarian. And one of his island is in Greece. And I went to that island and I talked to people, and they told me the reason why a lot of people live over 100. Of course, there is a diet. The Mediterranean diet helps, but there's a lot of social activity. There's a lot of connection. That's what's missing in a country like America. Not to point fingers, you know, people with all the social media have forgotten how to connect. You know, we're connecting on a cell phone, but this is not a real human connection. So this is what these people do better than anybody else. They always have festivals. They always dance. They always meet. They always have food together. You know, eating is a communion. Eating is not stuffing your face with junk food. You know, eating is a way to communicate with God and with your family. So, yeah, I love Greece, but when I leave Greece, I have several countries. I've always motivated myself to travel. I love traveling. I love exploring. So I'm going to go trekking in Chile, down in Patagonia, when I'm finished for about a month. And then I always wanted to take a cruise to Antarctica, so it's a good time. Why not? Go and spend 12 days in Antarctica, and after that, I'm going to go to Brazil to do some surf kiting. So you have to be in life to stay young. When you get to be old, like me, getting older, to stay young, to stay healthy, you have to motivate yourself. So you have to have a good imagination first, and then you have to take care of your body. Your body is your temple. You have to put good food in your body and good thoughts in your mind. That's a secret. That's one of the recipes to be happy and to live in peace. Doesn't matter which country you live in.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Sharice, along those same lines and in that same space, because I do agree with what Todd was saying, that a lot of times we don't do a good job of communicating. I can probably say that I actually know some of my neighbors, like Anna that's upstairs with her dog and a couple of the others, but a lot of people live in apartment complexes that they don't know any of their neighbors. I know that Cinco de Mayo, which was a while back in May, I actually met some of my Mexican neighbors because they were offering me a drink because they were celebrating Cinco de Mayo and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that, and how important is it for you to have that personal connection? Because I do agree with what Todd is saying, that sometimes we don't have enough of a personal connection. I'm always glad to get together with my friends like Martin, who I just talked about, and my other buddy Ray, and a number of others. That it's just good to see them in person and have that face-to-face interaction, and not just on the telephone and the computers. But I was wondering, how important is it for you to have that personal connection?
It's critical. Good example. I just did a client appreciation event last night for my South. So we have Utah County, Salt Lake County, Davis County in Utah. And so all my people in Utah County, I did this little movie with them. And we actually went to watch Toy Story. And Toy Story, if you have not seen Toy Story 4, I'm just going to get a plug. I don't make anything from it. That's fine. But oh my gosh, it's all about kids and how the iPad or the tablet has replaced play, especially with neighbor kids. And yeah, Taj, I love what you do. It's an inspiration, because I really do believe, I'm a sociologist. That's what I grew up, or what I graduated in my undergrad, and trying to understand how people think. I truly believe that we all wake up in the morning and we don't say, we look in the mirror, we go, I am going to annoy my neighbor today. And I'm going to make sure that I annoy every single person on the freeway. And I'm going to upset this person. That's not our intention. And so if we can try to figure out who we are and what the intentions are, I'm pretty sure it's all miscommunication. So if we can try to connect with people and get to know each other and on a different level, and make sure that we continue to talk to each other one-on-one, I would love to meet you in person, because I think that there's something there's energy that we pass each other. And so if we all just sit on computers, I mean, that's the hardest thing I'm watching with teenagers and young adults now. They don't know how to date because they just talk to each other online. And so they don't go out, and everyone spends their time in their room. And so I really, it's really hard to watch. And so it is, to me, it's critical.
Yeah, it's very critical. And the scary thing is that a lot of our young people are not only not dating, but sometimes they are frustrated that people their own age and everything like that. Because I've got some friends that are in their 30s and 40s. And like I said, I'm in my early, about to be mid 60s. But even in that dating space, they will tell me that they would rather date somebody my age because people their age are not of the mindset that they would like and everything like that, which
It's
can also
true.
be kind of a danger, because then you can also get caught up in the catfishing, because there are some people that are
Yes.
sensitive about that when they're talking about wanting to date across age limits, and there are others that are using it as a hustle. Let's just be honest about it and everything like that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but there can be some safe May December relationships. I've got some friends that are actually in those May December relationships if you can find a common bond and everything like that. But I think that common bond, but if in order for it to be successful. So I'm not, for those that are in May December relationships, I'm not saying that they're always bad, but be cautious. I'll just put it that way.
100%. That's why I talk about intuition, or you have to be careful. And because the iceberg, that's the whole reason I wrote the book. It's, you really don't know who you're talking to or dating or anymore, because everyone has this facade. You got to get past it. Flip your iceberg.
Yeah, you got to keep that facade, and a lot of people have got that facade and even that mask, because I know that's something
Yes.
that we talk about a lot. There's a lot of people wear multiple masks even when they're
Yes,
going
they do.
to jobs and everything like that, because I know
Yes.
people even talk about that notion of the different masks that they have to wear and not being their authentic selves. Because I know even in the minority communities, there's the talk about the different masks that people have to wear for corporate America versus the mask that they have to wear for other situations and everything like that. And I know that that exists in among the women population as well. So definitely sometimes I have to put on those masks and not be your authentic self. So I'm one of those believers in us all being authentic, or as authentic as possible. I mean, there are times that you might want to play a role, because I do know that role playing can be a real thing in relationships and can even be a good thing if you're doing it in the correct way and doing it in
Right.
what you're talking about, the playful way and everything
If
like that.
if they know that you're playing a role, not you're playing a role and you're lying about it.
Right,
That's the
exactly.
issue. Yes.
That's
Yes.
just if,
That's the-
like you said, if you want to play policeman and criminal, but you know you're playing that role, that's one thing. But if you're playing it because you're
Yeah.
trying to mask somebody, because that catfishing is real. Because I know people that have been robbed of thousands, not of tens of thousands of dollars, because people are wanting them to send them money because they've got their latest sob story. And I'm sure that you've seen that even among some of your peers.
A lot. Yeah.
So you
It's
got to
sad.
be. It's very sad. You got to be careful and everything like that. We'll get ready to wrap up. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Hope that both of you will come back at some point. But even what I asked Ellis earlier when he was here, I want to hear from both of you around that notion as well. So we've kind of talked about a number of these different issues, including housing and real estate and faith and a lot of other things. And that's what I love about this show, is that we have an authentic conversation, and we even talk to each other. Like you were talking to Ellis and you were talking to Taj, and that's what I like, because when my parents, they're both still living, but when they were living together, they would play Bid Whist, which is a form of a card game, and I would see them hang out and have conversations. So that's kind of where I got the notion of the online dinner party. I was like, well, what if I invite people, some that I know, some that I don't know, like in this case with all three people that I don't really know, but then I've had other guests where they were friends of mine and everything like that. But what if I just invite folks and we learn from each other as if you were having a card game, the way that I remember my parents doing it with their friends and everything like that. So I've been doing this for 5 years and I've had some amazing guests. But as I said before, I always love my guests to have the opportunity to give a message of positivity, because I do think that we all can be ministers in our own right. You don't have to have a divinity degree and everything like that. So if you can give a message of positivity, and this is for both you and Todd, and maybe, and Todd, you kind of alluded to it, but if you can share something that folks might be surprised to know about you. For all I know, you're a pool shark, Sharice, and everything like that. So maybe there's something that you people would be surprised to know about you and everything like that. I was watching an episode of, I think it was NCIS or one of those shows, and one of the guys, or one of the characters was both a pool shark, and I think the other one was a dart shark and everything like that. So that's why I was making that joke. For all I know, you could be a pool shark and everything like that. So what's a secret hobby or interest of yours? and your message of positivity. And if there's anything that we didn't get to that you would like to get to, and also if you can tell people how they can reach you, because I know Ellis put his in the web and I made that into a banner, but you can just say that verbally.
Taj, are you going to go or did you?
Oh, you were talking to me. Okay. Oh, I got a great message, but you talk about I need to mention about the mask. What about removing a mask of the ego? Okay, like a quick story. When I started my teacher training clinic in Kundalini Yoga, the first thing that our teacher said in the class, the very first day, he said, "You are not your mind. Remember that." So that was, to me, if I'm not my mind, what am I? So I spent the last 12 years of my life, pondering about that question. But the second thing that he said that he heard from his guru was, and remember that's probably a line you heard before, remember that your ego is not your amigo. Oh my God, that was an epiphany for me to realize that voice in the head that I was hearing all the time, the ego, was not my friend. It was more a foe than friend. It had been leading me astray. It was always, that's what Charis was talking about, that people are divided. There's too much division in this world. So you have to get out of that ego mode. And we live in America. I don't live in America any longer, but I live in America for 30 years. You work in corporate America, as you know, there's a lot of ego. I was working in sales. There was nothing but ego. There was ego and deception and backstabbing, and that's what you live in. So you have to get out of that and realize that it's not your friend. So my message to your listeners, to all the people around, is once you realize that, with the understanding that you have the ability to rise above your circumstances, it doesn't matter what side of a track you live in, okay? It doesn't matter if you spend 27 years of your life in jail like Nelson Mandela, okay? How did Nelson Mandela endure all the punishment that he took at the hand of his jailers? And then when he became president, he invited a couple of the guards that were the harshest towards him, that would be mistreating him and beating him up, invited them. So, obviously you have to turn things around. So you have the power to manifest your own destiny. And you have to understand that you can rise above anything in life if you put your mind to it, if you put your heart to it. And you have to get out of that loser, that victim's mentality that's very prevalent in our society today. I could talk by experience. For 55 years of my life, I was always a victim. It was never my fault. I was always pointing fingers. It was always somebody else's fault. So that's the time when I realized that when you take responsibility 100% for your life, for all the people in your life, you are the one that attracted them in the first place. So if you want to change the people around you, change yourself first. Mm-hmm. And to your listener that don't know, I will advise them to pick up a book and learn about Ho'oponopono. Get on my website, tajsimri.com. Send me an email. I'd be happy to send you some free books about Ho'oponopono. understand that when you say, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I thank you, and I love you," these are principles that if you're Christian, you can date back these 4 principles to the Desert Fathers from the 2nd century. St. John the Baptist, people that roam around Palestine and Jordan and maybe Egypt. But the same principles right here. And sometimes even in Greece, Mount Athos, like from the 18th century, where you have all these philosophy of, I forgot what you call them. What's the Greek something. They all come from these principles of forgiveness, responsibility, gratitude, and love. So if this is my last message, I hope that some of you listeners can take advantage and study that. And, if it's hard to pronounce, Ho'oponopono, it changed my life. It became my holy grail.
That makes a lot of sense.
And you have to,
Go ahead.
yeah, and you have to practice it. Forgiveness is like a plant on your balcony. You have to water it, okay? You don't forgive somebody once. You have to keep watering the plant. Otherwise, it's going to wither and die. So this is the same thing with forgiveness. You have to keep, like love, you have to nurture. Like a communication with your spouse. You have to keep nurturing that communication, nurturing that love.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you saying that. A good friend of mine, Mike Anderson, has a company called Polished Souls. I think he was arrested and spent time in prison for manslaughter, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. But he has been out for a number of years. Actually, Baba Chuck Davis, who passed away about 8 years ago, was one of his mentors and everything like that. But Mike has been out addressing people in the gang lifestyles and things like that. So he's definitely used the time that he was in prison and now been out and married to I want to say that LaWanda, I know she's a writer. I think she may also be a minister, but they have been together for a number of years, and both of them are out there doing their own way of addressing people that have been going through troubled times, whether that's gangs or whether that's other ways of getting in trouble. Because like I said, to your point, Todd, he had that experience and he used that experience to teach other folks not to follow in his footsteps, because sometimes you don't want people to follow in your footsteps if they've been negative footsteps and everything like that. So Mike Anderson and Polished Souls is actually a longtime friend of mine and everything like that. Just really quickly, Todd, before I get to Sharice, you kind of alluded to it with some of the things you want to do, including that cruise, but what is something that is a hobby or an interest of yours that people would be surprised to know is an interest of yours, or something that you're hoping to do that you haven't done yet? Because I know you mentioned the cruise and you mentioned a couple of other things, but what's something that is a interest of yours that people may be surprised to know is a hobby or interest?
Oh, every day I discover new things I want to do. As I tell you, I'm going to turn 69. I think I'm going to travel full time till I'm 89. And then by then, I'm going to find myself a nice place on the water with a boat and kind of relax. And maybe still travel 6 months out of a year. However, my big goal right now, as soon as I finish my trilogy, I'm going to travel for 3 months, as I told you, Chile, Antarctica, Brazil. Then I'm going to go back to India because I left my motorbike with some friends in south of India. And then my goal is to spend 1 year traveling to Japan with my motorbike. And I'm going to travel with ferry. I'm going to put my bike on a boat to go to Sri Lanka. From Sri Lanka, I'm going to put on a container ship to go to Malaysia and then Thailand, ride through Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And I would put my bike on the boat, hopefully to go to Korea, and then to Taiwan, and then all the way to Japan. And when I finish all that, the big dream in my life, something I've been thinking for 60 years, I want to go back to France and buy a German camper van, like a good one, a luxury one, something nice, and it's going to be my home. Okay, this is a podcast about home, and I'm thinking, why are you inviting me? I've been homeless for 8 years. And before that, I slept in my car for 1 year. So why are you inviting me on the podcast about home? Well, because I'm going to have a home on wheels. And I'm going to put my motorbike in the back. I'm going to have a little Honda. So it's all in here. I manifested all that. I've got already the color of a bike and the model of a camper van. I'm going to travel around Europe for about 3 years. And I'm going to keep writing books. And hopefully I want to become a public speaker someday. So hopefully I could go and try to make a difference in people's lives and, be of service. Like Sherry talked earlier, you have to be a service. Once you start doing volunteer work, you realize that you are nothing. You're like shit. Excuse my French. I mean, we're like little pieces of shit. That's all we are. We're worse than that. So excuse my bad language again. But when you do volunteer work, you start to realize that people in life that have things, their trauma is much bigger than yours. Then it puts things in perspective, and you realize, and it opens your heart to start working with people and start helping them. So yeah, that's what I want to do. That's a dream of my life. Have a camper van. Now I have a home. Because when you travel like me for 8 years non-stop, guess what? You're always staying in hotels. it gets very, very tiring. And if you're traveling in Europe or in America, it's very expensive. You have to spend $100, $120 per night in a hotel. And you have to go to a restaurant and you have to have 3 meals or 2 meals outside. So when you have a camper van, now you can make your own food. You can stop at the market, you can buy vegetable and cheese, and you stop and make coffee on your mocha pot, and you could put your camper van on the cliff and look at the sunset. What a beautiful! So that's been the dream of my life. In 2 years from now, I will fulfill this dream. And when I'm done with Europe, I will put the camper van on a big ferry and go to Mexico, and from there I will ride all the way down to Patagonia. And when I'm done with South America, we go back to Uruguay and go through Cape Horn all the way to South Africa, make my way all the way up. So I've got about 10-year plan. So, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, people don't get old because they don't have dreams, something like that. People don't get old, people don't get dreams, stop having dreams because they're getting old. No, that's the other way around. They're getting old because they stop having dreams. So as long as you keep having dreams, as long as you keep trying to learn, try to become a better person, try to evolve. This is the purpose of our life, Mark, to evolve. It doesn't matter where you are. Maybe you're 85 years old and you have no consciousness. I was 59 years old and I had zero consciousness, and little by little, I started building it up. So we all work in progresses. We have to realize we are a physical being having a spiritual experience. Yeah?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Because I'm a big fan of Buddy Guy, because like I said, I've been involved with the Blues Festival. I want to say Buddy Guy, and I'm actually going to look it up. He's approaching his 90th birthday or all along those lines, but he is still playing and has more energy than some 20-year-olds that I know and everything like that. So he is still out there performing, and actually, yeah, he's 89 years old, so he'll be turning 90 on July 30th of this year. So he's 89 and still out there performing and all along those lines. In fact, he's still out there touring and doing the whole 9 years. And like I said, when I've heard people, including some that have seen him perform recently, they said that he's got more energy than some 20-year-olds and everything like that. So,
I love Buddy Guy. Buddy Guy is a phenomenal. I saw him twice live. Yeah. What a showman. What a showman.
Oh, he's definitely a showman. I've seen him. I actually have even introduced him. So he's a true showman, and yeah, he's a great musician. But I agree, we all got to have that attitude of that joy of life and everything like that. So you're very true in that space. Sharice, as we get ready to wind down and everything like that, what is your thoughts around your message of positivity, and also something that you are hoping to do that might be a hobby or an interest or all along those lines, but definitely share your message of positivity also.
So Rob Schneider said in the movie, "You can do it." And a couple months ago, he actually came to Dry Bar Comedy in Provo, and I actually got him to say that to me, like, "Sharice, you can do it," and so I have it on video. So that used to be my thing, but I looked down at my t-shirt and it says, you can't see it, but it's "Don't quit now." But if you take the don't, it's actually "Do it now." And so I don't know if you can see it, but don't quit now.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I think that we all need to remember is that I hear so many people say, I've always wanted to fill in the blank. And my question is, what's stopping you now? Like my husband and I, we had been married for 14 years last year, and he'd always talked about wanting to go to Hawaii. And so I'm like, okay, we've been talking about this for 14 years. So I logged into my computer and I booked the flight and I booked the trip, and we went 2 weeks later. And so it's like, honey, we're not going to just talk about things. I don't believe in that in my life. You never know when your time's up.
Right.
And so do it now. Like just go do whatever you are wanting to do. And so the biggest thing, I pretty much fulfilled everything on my bucket list. Ran my marathon before I turned 50, and the very last thing is getting my PhD. And so that's something that I'm actually talking and interviewing different colleges as we speak. I don't need my PhD. I do very well without my PhD, but that's on my bucket list. I've used to be a college teacher at 22, then I became the dean, and then I opened up colleges in the Valley. And so I just have always wanted to get my PhD. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to go back and get my PhD. And so that's something that I'm working on.
Yeah, that's a good thing and everything like that. So yeah, you got to go ahead and do that. Get that PhD. I know that my younger brother went on the 25-year plan in terms of getting his degree and everything like that because he graduated 7 years after I did. So that would have been 87. And then he went, and maybe I might be exaggerating when I said 25, but it was a number of years before he got his degree because he had to figure out what he wanted to be when he grew up. But he definitely has been working with reaching out to at-risk youth. And I actually hate using that term because I sometimes think it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we tell kids that they are at risk, and sometimes that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy because it just kind of like get them to have that mindset if we keep telling them that and everything like that. So like I said, I do know that I use the term, but I also get that caveat on it because I do hate that notion of it being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Before we get out of here, I'm going to play a commercial about a PSA that comes from Oklahoma, and it's about a education award, but it's not just to the teachers, even though it is to the teachers, but it's also to people that are the support staff. I know that my grandmother on my mom's side was a cafeteria worker. My grandmother on my dad's side was a librarian, actually started the first Black library in Raleigh, North Carolina, and everything like that. And I've had friends that have been resource officers. Mom was a guidance counselor when I was a youngster and everything like that. So like when I was maybe after we had come back from Turkey, so probably like 4 or 5 or something like that. So I am a big supporter of the support staff as well, including, like I said, the resource officers, the guidance counselors. I would even argue the janitor because I had a play that I just recently got a copy of that I did way back in 1995 called Confessions of a Buppy, in which a person is having to do what I do now, which is get around by mass transit. Their car, and even though I'm not a driver, breaks down, so they are forced to get out of corporate America, and they see a lot of things that they probably would not normally see, like the homeless person and the people that are dealing with drugs and a number of other things. So when they get to the janitor, as you know, Sharice, and even you, Todd, sometimes the janitors and the secretaries know more about where the bodies are hidden and everything along those lines. So they're very important in jobs, whether it's a real estate agency or whether it's a school or a number of other things. So when they get to the janitor is actually schooling this particular character. And like I said, I wrote this as a skit some 30 years ago. And he's like, wait a minute, how do you know this? He's like, well, y'all are kind of ignoring me, but I'm actually the one that has to throw away all this trash. So I see a lot more than y'all are giving me credit for and all along those lines. So that was kind of the theme of this particular skit that I wrote. And like I said, I just got the copy of it, so I'm going to put it in my VCR at some point or another and watch it. You know, I did it back in 1995, so it was almost 31 years ago that I wrote this particular skit, but I think it's still relevant to today's times and everything like that. So before I play this video and get us on out of here, for both of you, and I'll start with you, Sharice, and then hear from Todd, who were some important educators or support staff that you remember that helped you in your own growth and everything like that? So maybe it was a school teacher that you remember or a coach that you remember. So who was somebody that was important in your life?
Mrs. Piper. She was my 5th grade teacher. So I had skipped 4th grade. We moved from Utah to California, and my birthday was after. And so I guess I was doing really well on tests. So they tested me and they moved me. So I skipped 4th grade, which is when you learn long division and your first round of history. And so when I get to 5th grade, they're doing all this other stuff, and I don't know what the heck is going on. And so she, with her long nails, and she loved to give us stickers. And so she would work with me a lot. And I could have been bullied because, you know, the kids might have been like, "Wow, why'd you get to skip?" But it was probably my most favorite school year ever in all of my education. Like 12 years. Not college. But she was amazing. And she just was very inspirational, very loving, very kind. And so to this day, if she's still living, I would love to say hello to her. But she was just an amazing woman.
Now, here you, before I get to Todd, just along those same lines, and I told this story before, I do remember that there were not that many people because I grew up in a small rural town. Because we moved there when I was like 11 years old and were there until after my college years. So let's say 11 to 24, including some times that I was going back and forth to the cities that I might have been working at, like Raleigh and places along those lines. But I do remember, and this is just kind of one of those humorous moments, a teacher that was from Laos. I remember a drama teacher, and I think I can't remember his name, but he was known as being kind of like getting you to learn about drama by being hands-on and everything like that. So I remember having to drive a car and pretending like the the car is actually a chair, and you had to learn how to open the door and put in all of that. And I think his name was Gene Haskins or something like that, if I remember correctly. I know there's the actor that has that similar name, but it was Gene something, if I remember correctly. But I had to do some back research. But one of the other things that I do remember is there was a teacher that was from Laos, because a lot of times teachers of different languages are from different parts of the world, even to what Todd was talking about from his wanting to do Asian travels. But I remember this Laos teacher who was I was probably 16 or 17, so she was probably 22 or 23, fresh out of college, and she gave one of those long physics formulas, those long formulas of physics or chemistry. And I just remember her writing the whole formula on the blackboard, because we had the blackboards and everything like that. And I just remember her looking back after writing about, let's say, 2/3 of the blackboard, and she looked back at the few students, because like I said, it's a small college, so there were only probably like 10 of us in the class, and she's going back and she's like, I'm sorry, but in a thick Laos accent, I'm not sure that this is right. And all of us as students were going like, well, if you don't know it's right, how are we supposed to know it's right if you don't know it's right? So I just remember that moment of her like looking at us and us being young 17-year-olds, looking at her like, wait a minute, you don't know if it's right? So, and we've all been diligently writing the notes as she's giving the formula, and she looks back at us and is like, I'm not sure that this is right.
But at least she admitted that she wasn't quite sure. Some people might have played it off. So I love that she was honest.
And I did, in hindsight, I do appreciate that she was honest, and that she was admitting that she needed to go back and double check herself. Because even in life today, we have to sometimes go back and double check ourselves. So that is actually one of those. I'm glad you brought that out, Sharice, because that's actually one of those life lessons that sometimes we need to double check ourselves and admit that we are not always correct. Because even when I'm doing my history tours, there are a couple of things, because history is an ongoing process. We are constantly learning about it. So even when I do my history talks about Black Wall Street and other things, there are some things that I know are theories, and I can only speak to them as theories. So even when I was talking to some kids recently, there's like a famous barber, and he was one of the barbers for Mr. Duke, who founded Duke University. And he had 3 barbershops, one for his Black customers, one for his white customers, and then there was a third customer. And my theory, and it is strictly a theory, is that Mr. Duke, and I have found this out as a fact, went up to New York to get poor white folks to come down to work at the tobacco and the textile mills. So my theory is that just like there were race issues, there were class issues. So my theory is that the third barbershop might have been for the white, and I'm not asking the race or anything like that, I'm just saying sense of what we're talking about, for the white poor customers, because the white affluent customers might not want to associate with the white poorer customers. So like I said, this is only a theory, and what I told the students, I don't have any proof, but when I mentioned other historians, they were like, that makes valid sense. And everything. So, but it's strictly a theory until I can find somebody that can back it and everything like that. So it's only a theory until I can find concrete proof. Like I said, I didn't know that we had a log cabin as a third unit. I did mention that the Hayti was a brush arbor, which means that they had land, and then they had the church, which I knew they had the church, but then recently, as me and a student of Ukrainian descent, we're going through all these different images and stuff, and we're still doing this over the next month and a half. We found a picture of a log cabin. So, like I said, I didn't know that there was a log cabin. Other people that I talked to were like, I knew that there was a log cabin. I'm going like, well, y'all didn't tell me.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Todd, just really quickly, who was a teacher that inspired you? Then I'm gonna play this video and get us on out of here.
That's a good question. I spent the last 10 minutes trying to think in my head of what is a teacher had a big influence on my life. Well, I'll tell you what the big problem was. When I was in school, doesn't matter when I started 5 years old all the way till before college, I was never paying attention to the teacher. I thought I was pretty smart in itself, so I could, but I was always daydreaming. I was always looking at the window at something. And as a matter of fact, I'm a graduate from a school of hard knocks. 2 months before enrolling in college, well, I decided to pick a backpack, and I went to pick grapes in the south of France. I met a Spanish girl. Next thing you know, we fall in love. I spent 1 year living in Spain with her, and I started to travel around the world with a backpack for about maybe like 10 years, from 17. So the biggest teacher my best teachers have always been all the knocks, all the hard knocks I took, all the punches and the kicks. All the time I fell down, I had to pick myself up. So that's the only thing I could think of. And because this is how you learn. You learn when you're down. You don't learn when you're on the top. It's just a mirage. It's just a costume you're wearing when you think you have success and you think you have a house and you have a car and people are admiring you. No, you have to wait till you come down. That's where you fall down to the ground, and then you have to learn. So these are my teachers. And also, I should mention all the authors, all the people that wrote all these beautiful books from the beginning of time till now, because this is where the knowledge is. This is where my new purpose is to start writing books. I want to, hopefully make a difference in people's lives, where 20, 30 years, 100 years from now, maybe somebody would pick up my book in the library. That'd be something remarkable, right? We can always dream of that. Yeah.
And who knows, maybe they'll have that happen and everything like that. As I get ready to play this video and get us on out of here, Sharice and Todd, y'all get a quick kick out of this, and they'll be very short stories. But as you were talking, Todd, I remember that a friend of mine, an acquaintance when I was in our college newspaper at Marquette, he actually did what you're talking about, which I don't know that it's safe to do now, and I don't know that it was safe to do in the early 80s, but I do remember that I believe his name was Tom Morfitt. He actually hitchhiked from, I want to say, the Midwest to Alaska, because that was the early days of the Alaska pipeline. So he actually went to go to work in the Alaska pipeline and hitchhiked on just a random decision to go out on that particular trip. And then I think he wound up eventually moving into Alaska and working in their city council or something along those lines. But he did wind up living in Alaska. I think was even married and did politics and all along those lines. And as you were talking about earlier, and then I'll get off and totally end the show on this note. Sharice, you'll get a kick out of this, since we were talking about romance earlier. I ran track. I was a horrible track runner. I was like Charlie Brown on my track team. I won every race. I did pick a friend who unfortunately passed away at a young age. I think Jimmy might have been in his 20s, because I knew I could beat him. So I recruited somebody that I knew I could beat, because I was tired of losing, because I was finishing dead last and all along those lines. But to the point about romance and everything like that, part of the reason, because I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, that I ran track was because I had and we all have those in life. I had a crush on the cheerleaders, and two of the cheerleaders were scorekeepers. So I actually ran track because I wanted to be close to the two young ladies that were doing the scorekeeping, because they were also members of the cheerleading team. So the only reason I ran track is I was trying to get close to them. They did not pay any attention to me. They actually wound up getting married, I think, both of them, and had a successful life and families and all along those lines. But as a high school kid, I was like, hey, at least I can get close to them if I run track, because we'll be on the bus together. But I was also highly shy, so I never approached them, even though I had a crush on them and everything.
Darn it. See, don't you wish you could go back and, like, there's a few things you wish you could go back and at least let them know that you like them, right?
Wow.
I got back and been like, I'm running track because I'm interested in you, and not being the super shy person that I was. But yeah, to your point, yes, I do regret that I did not get the opportunity to tell them that the only reason I was running track is because I had an attraction to them. So yeah, sometimes you do wish you could go back in time and turn back the clock.
It'd probably make their day too.
It probably would make their day. They might even get a kick out of that. So Deidre and Stephanie, if y'all are watching, Deidre Bullock and Stephanie Logan was y'all's name in college. I mean, in the high school. Yes, the only reason I ran track was because I had a crush on both of you. So
I'm so glad you said that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So on that note, I'm going to play this commercial from my good friends in Oklahoma. Both of y'all were amazing, and we're going to get out of here. I hope you enjoyed this show, both of you, as well as Elias and everything. But that's what I do. I bring guests together, and we learn from each other. So I hope that y'all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
That was fun.
Bye. Cool.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on time. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on time. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you. I thank you for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
It's non-stop.